Let's look at a way of colorizing this exercise. What we're going to do is we're going to colorize this line drawing. So in order to colorize a grayscale image, well, it needs to be color. So I'm going to go to mode, image mode, and make this an RGB image. Once I've done that, I'd like to go ahead and start my color. So I need to have a selection. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and colorize this cape. And what I've done is I've used the pen tool to create a selection. You guys can use the lasso, you can hand paint, you can do whatever you like. I just chose to make a path using the pen tool. Now once I've made the path, I'm going to click on the icon for the path and I'm going to make a selection. And then I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it Red Cape. And I'm going to go ahead and select a red color from my foreground color. Now when you select a color and you select a very red color, Photoshop is going to say, hey, you know what, you're out of gamut. I'm going to say, okay, I'd like that color, but I want it to be CMYK safe. If I click on that icon of the gamut warning, it will move me to a safer CMYK space. I'm going to also go ahead and make this a darker red because I want it to be rich. Uh-oh, it's out of gamut again. Click on that icon and it'll move me back in. So now that I've got my red selected, I'm going to Option Delete and fill that particular layer in. You guys, you can do this with the shape layer as well. I'm just choosing to do this with the standard paint layer. Now I want the lines on top, so I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of my background layer by hitting Command J while I'm on the background, and I'm going to call it Lines. I'm going to then move that layer up above the color, all the color. It'll sit on top. And I'm going to change that layer mode to multiply. On the mode multiply, white disappears, black will stay solid. Now, with this technique, if you've actually missed a spot, you can go back in on the paint layer, and using your paintbrush, you can go in and fill in. Oh, look at my opacity. Not quite strong enough. It's only at 30%. I'm going to make it 100% on my paintbrush opacity. And I can go in and fill in any area I need to. So you'll notice I've actually missed a couple spots here. In fact, I didn't even path it. Well, I can go in again with the paintbrush and select it, or I could redraw my path. It depends on your workflow and what you need to do. You get the idea. Now, what I'd like to show you though is adding some texture because this is rather flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer, Command-Shift-N, and I'm going to call it Texture. And I want to fill it with 50% gray, so I'm going to go to the Fill menu or hit Shift-Delete to get the Fill menu up, and I'm going to fill it with the color 50% gray. I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it is, covering the entire image right now. And I'm going to go under Filter to Texture, and I'm going to create a texture. Now there's a bunch of different textures available to you in this window. I'm going to pick something perhaps like a burlap or canvas. And what you'll see here is you have some choices on relief, how much relief you want, how much scaling, where you want the lighting to come from. Feel free to play around here. You also have canvas or sandstone or brick. I think the burlap would fit for this particular type of garment. I'm going to go ahead and say Apply Texture, and then the texture comes in. Now the key here is I really only want this to affect the cape. So I'm going to hold the Option key and click on the line in between the two layers. Option on the line between the two layers, and that's going to group it. So wherever there is red on that bottom layer, wherever there's pixels, that texture will show through. And in fact, if I put that on the mode called Overlay, then the color red is going to show through. And this way I can go in and keep painting and adding whatever I want to, and or changing. Now here's the cool thing about this type of style. If you've done it, you can, let's say you've changed your mind and got, you know what, I really want a green cape or I want something else. You can go Command U to get the Hue Saturation menu up, Command U, or under the Image Adjust menu, and you can shift the color of this cape without having to repaint everything. So it lets you be really, really flexible, okay? Now, in addition to this, you could, in fact, let's go ahead and make that a little bit of a different color just for the heck of it. I'm going to make it a little more orangey. Now on top of that, perhaps you want to add a little shading. The next thing I'm going to do is add a new layer. Again, Command-Shift-N. And do you see this box here? This will allow me to clip it or group it to the layer below already, and that will help me. And I'm going to call it Shading. Now on this one, again, I think I'm going to put it on Overlay because I just want to put some tone. And what I'm going to do is take the paintbrush, B for paintbrush, and I'm going to hit the default color to get black. And I'm going to make my brush a little bigger and perhaps a lower opacity, let's say 20 or so. And I'm going to go in and paint shading. Now just for the demo, I'm going to do this rather quickly, but you guys are going to want to do this with some time. And I'm going to switch from black to white, and I can go in, I can make my brush bigger or smaller depending on what I'm going to do here, and go in and shade the rest of this fabric so it's got more volume and depth. Again, I really want to stress this is illustration at its finest point here, you know, and you really need to take your time and paint it very, very carefully. This is no different than being a standard illustrator. And I'm going to zoom out. Again, this is a little heavy, it's a little dark, or contrasty, I should say. That's it with it on or off. But remember, you can also change your opacity after you've done all your blending, and maybe 50% would be a better target for this. Or as you're working and you decide later, you know what, no, this really does need to be brighter, depending on how the rest of the image goes.